Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Sarah's Chill is a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. Clunky coolers, bulky bags, batteries, and cords are so yesterday. We'll hear more from or about them later. And you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page if you ever need anything. See if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. While you're there, scroll down, enter your email address, and we'll send these episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are having a blast over on Patreon with all the people who have joined and who are still joining. We are sharing a lot of original content, like our Dianne and I do mini podcasts. We do extra ad-free episodes. We have a monthly Zoom hangout where we all get together and we just sort of talk and vent and seek advice. So check out the link at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and check out the tiers. We're also hosting our ongoing giveaway. So if you're still wondering about that, I know people sometimes are like, I don't know if you're still doing this. We are still doing it. It's just ongoing. So if you leave a review, either on iTunes or anywhere you listen from, you can write a review or leave stars or whatever you're able to do. Take a screenshot of that and send it over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we will send you a goodie bag of Badass Breastfeeding Podcast stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards that you can hand to other breastfeeders that you see out in the world, out in the wild. And yeah, that's it. I think Dianne has our review of the week now. I always say, I know you do.
I do have it. I do. I just discovered this podcast a few weeks ago. I've found Abby and Dianne to be so comforting and encouraging in my breastfeeding journey. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for finding us. I'm so glad I love it when people say I discovered you. Like, yes, we've been discovered.
We've been discovered.
Yes.
Are we finally going to get a radio show from you? Thank you.
But yeah, thank you for joining us and listening and leaving a review for us. And we love it.
That's all it takes. And we send you a little goodie bag.
I know. It's so fun. I got some to send out this week, I think. So
yeah, I was getting some more together. And also, if you don't receive your package within like a few weeks, don't hesitate to reach out and just check on the status of that, because I'm generally very organized and I try to be very organized, but I can make a mistake when I'm gathering these addresses.
Yeah,
so
it happens.
Don't feel bad about checking in. You can just say, hey, is it coming, or did you forget, or what?
Yeah. So go ahead and leave us a review, get your goodie bag, and that's it. Today we're going to talk about spitting up.
Gross.
And we did this. It's gross. I had one that spit up so much, like my Brandon, my youngest, oh my God, spit up so much. Like I can remember putting him on my shoulder to burp him and he would just spit up all down my back.
Oh my God.
Spit up. He was such a spitter. He would like leave puddles. He would be crawling and leaving puddles of spit up like on the floor. He spit up so much. So spitting up is something I get questions about all the time because parents get so worried about it. Like, why is my baby spitting up? Is this normal? When is it going to stop? What do I do about it?
Throwing up all the food they just ate?
Should I feed them again? Like, what should I do? Get questions about this all the time. And spitting up, I will tell you, is very, very normal for newborns. And for babies overall, it's just very, very normal. I rarely meet a baby who doesn't spit up. Did yours spit up?
Yeah, I think they spit up a normal amount. Just like, every once in a while they would spit up. They weren't huge spitter uppers.
No.
Yeah, not a lot.
It
definitely happened. It definitely happened.
Yeah.
And I think there was times where it was like you get lost. You can totally get lost on the internet with this. Like, oh, if it comes out liquidy, it's fine. If it comes out curdled, that means it's vomit. And they're something wrong, or, you hear things like I actually, on one of our previous myths episode, there was a woman who it was somebody that in her household or somebody or a neighbor or something, that she told her that if the baby was spitting up, that meant that her milk it was like rotten.
That's not true.
Like,
that's a myth, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So of course, this like young mom was just like, oh my God, something is wrong with my milk. My baby's spitting up. They're getting poisoned from my, rotten milk.
Yeah, and that's not the case.
That's
not the case. So we have our normal spitting up, we have our excessive spitting up, and what's normal is your baby so what happens? One of the things with the spitting up is that there is that sphincter muscle between the stomach and the esophagus on everybody, and it is weak on all babies, including yours. And that's because they're brand new, right? Babies are brand new. All their systems are weak. All their muscles are weak, and everything needs to get strengthened up. So the sphincter muscle between the stomach and the esophagus is weak. And if they get a belly full of milk and then you lay them down to, like, say, change a diaper, it comes right back up again because nothing's keeping it down. We don't have that muscle to keep it down. So it just kind of like flows back up again. And then you might get this baby, like maybe, for example, you fed your baby during the night, and in the morning when you go to get them up, they have a puddle next to their bed or next to their face on the mattress. Mm-hmm. That is normal to see. Like, we see that. A lot of people worry that their baby's going to choke during the night if they let them, lay down. That's not going to happen. That is normal spit up. And usually it's just kind of comes up, goes out. You don't even know what happened. I remember getting my kids out of the car seat and being like, oh, they spit up, because you don't even hear it happen a lot of the times. It kind of like, it's just kind of there, right?
Because it's not throwing up. It's just comes out. It's not the body rejecting it. It's not like that whole contracting of the stomach muscles and the pushing of the... Like, it's just, it's like
get nauseous,
overflows,
like we do when we vomit. It's totally different story. I can imagine the little baby like vomiting. It's not really like that. They're just like, and it doesn't mean that their body's rejecting the milk. It just happens, right? They just have it. It just happens. That's really normal stuff. Now, if your baby is spitting up a lot, like after every single feeding, then we might want to look at like, okay, what is happening here? Because sometimes what we say is to hold your baby upright for like 10, 15 minutes after they eat, to kind of let everything settle. And that can really help a lot to kind of, keep them from spitting up. Sucks during the night, because then you're kind of like, you just want to put them back to sleep during the night. But if you can hold them upright for like 10 or 15 minutes, that really, really helps with the spitting up. But sometimes that's not possible to do, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can, definitely do that. Now, some of the reasons, if your baby is spitting up a lot, we need to look at like what's going on. Do they have reflux? Right? Reflux is where where the food is coming up all the time and your baby is being bothered by that. So most of the time, spitting up is not a problem. Like, it becomes a laundry issue. And unless it is bothering your baby, it's kind of like, okay, this is just messy, and you're constantly changing your clothes and constantly changing your baby's clothes, and it's just a messy thing. And sometimes that's all it is. But if it seems to be bothering your baby, like they're crying a lot before it happens, then that could mean that it is bothering them, like that it's burning coming up, like how when adults get reflux. That could be something that's going on with your baby. And that's something that you would want to talk to your provider about. But you can help your baby with stuff like that just by like I said, holding them upright, keeping them upright. It kind of goes away on its own after a while. After a few months, things will kind of regulate, and it doesn't happen as much anymore.
So babies are bothered by reflux? Would they be like fussy, crying, like?
Yeah, they'd be fussy, crying, could be uncomfortable. Some things that they do for reflux is, like I said, you kind of holding your baby upright for a little bit is helpful. Sometimes people do medication, but it's not necessary all the time. It's better to try to do things differently if you can. Small, frequent feeds are definitely better. And sometimes babies just do that on their own. They just become like these little snackers, which is maybe not what you want. You want a baby that's going to eat and be done. But some of these babies, and be done for like 3 hours, but not all babies do that. If you're feeding them, like if they have reflux and they're getting like small frequent feeds, that's a lot easier for them. I mean, think about when adults have reflux. Like if you have a huge meal, that's not good for your reflux, right? If you're somebody that has reflux. I mean, I have it. I live on Tums. It's just like, but you don't want to give your baby a ton of milk and then have them be uncomfortable, because they can be uncomfortable. So doing small frequent feeds with them can be really helpful to kind of keep the reflux. Keeping them in an upright position with feeds, like if you can, keeping them a little bit more upright, tilting them a little bit more, maybe sitting them up straight when they're feeding can be helpful too. For a baby that's really struggling a lot with reflux, we might need to alter the way their positioning is a little bit if they're spitting up a lot and they're uncomfortable with the reflux. But like I said, they do grow out of it. And then severe reflux, babies don't gain weight or they have trouble gaining weight. And I've never seen that.
Because they're just spinning up all their food all the time.
Because they're not wanting to eat that.
Down. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, not wanting to eat that much. Yeah.
Oh.
I know, poor little guys.
I like your Wonder Woman cup.
Do you like it? Isn't it fun, everybody? For those of you who are on YouTube, that's the Wonder Woman through the years.
Oh, that's cool.
But some things that can cause it. So like I said, sometimes it just happens and there's not a lot you can do about it. Sometimes they're getting too much milk, right? Like if you have an overactive letdown, or if you are somebody that makes a lot of milk, that could be something that is causing the problem. So it could be something like that.
That's what I remember with Jack. Because there was a day, like neither of them spit up very much. But one time I left Jack with my parents and I had bottles of breast milk in the refrigerator. I didn't think to explain that the entire milk stash in the refrigerator was for him in that moment. Because whatever, I wasn't even gone that long. But I came back and they had fed him 3 full bottles of breast milk that I had pumped. And this was when I was still pumping, trying to, whatever, just figuring it out. And I was like, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, what? All 3 bottles? They're like, yeah, all 3 bottles. So then we went for a walk and I had Jack in the carrier and he just spit up the entire time. He was just spitting up the whole entire time. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, look at him. He's spitting up. Of course, they were mortified. They didn't know. They had no idea. And this is just a public service announcement to everybody is your caregiver doesn't know. Your caregiver doesn't have any idea what they are supposed to be feeding your baby. You have to be very clear. And they're usually going to argue with you that's not enough, or they're still hungry, they're fussy, da da da. And it doesn't no, you have to put your foot down because they shouldn't have too much to eat, just like anybody else. It's not going to make them feel good. It's going to come back up. And plus then all your milk is gone.
Right.
And it's
on top of it.
Yeah. I feel like people just there's no feeling that there's always too little food. There's never too much food for a baby. That's not the same for an adult. But for a baby, they're just oh no, lots of food. That's the best thing. It's lots of milk and too much milk is great. It's not.
No. You're gonna run into problems. I've never heard somebody say, "Oh, you're leaving this much milk? We'll never use this much." You
No,
never
no one's
hear
ever
that.
said that. It's always just like, there could be like 6 bottles and people will be like, oh my God, is that enough for the day?
I know.
What?
I know. It's crazy. And if you haven't listened to our episode on overfeeding yet, like definitely check that out because we talk a lot about that because overfeeding is a thing.
Oh God.
Like it really is a thing. And people say too, like, is there a problem with babies getting too much? Yeah, there is.
I mean, your
we've
stomach is a certain size. If you eat more than your stomach fits, like that's not going to feel good. It's not good for you.
No, we don't want to stretch their little stomachs out that early in life.
Wait till later to do that.
Because it'll come.
Yeah.
But they, overfeeding is definitely a problem. And if you're somebody that has a lot of milk, that has an overactive letdown or something like that, and the baby's getting like flooded with milk when you feed them, we do see those babies spitting up more. And a lot of it is like they're gulping milk. Like if you hear your baby gulping, doing a lot of gulping, they're taking in air with that too. And that could cause some spitting up. So I would suggest like taking them off periodically and trying to burp them. I know we always say you don't need to burp a breastfed baby that much, but if your baby is taking in gulps of milk, then definitely try to burp them. I mean, it's just going to be better that way and probably less spitting up if you can burp them more frequently.
Yeah.
Try to work on that overactive letdown if it's something that you have, or if you have a lot of milk, if you have too much milk. Too much milk is a problem. Believe it or not, having too much milk can be a problem. So if you do have too much milk, then that is something you might want to try to reel in. And I know we've done episodes on that in the past. Maybe we can do another one coming up, but that is something that's really, really hard. Oh, we should take a break.
Yeah, we should.
We should hear about Serious Chill again.
Yes, we're going to take a break, hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill, a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. Clunky coolers, bulky bags, and batteries and cords are so yesterday. Created by a mom for moms, Sarah's Chill guarantees convenience with their double-walled stainless steel breast milk chillers. A handful of ice is all you need to keep your breast milk or formula safe for 20 hours. No more lugging around bags of plastic and chemical freeze packs. Now you can pump and double pump all day into one sleek container. The chillers are made with all the best materials, food-grade stainless steel, platinum silicone, and absolutely no lead components, because moms deserve the best. Sarah's Chill is there for you no matter where your journey takes you. Breast milk storage, formula storage, cow's milk for toddlers, and more. Their products are not only beautiful, they're also travel-friendly and FSA, HSA reimbursable. This is truly breast milk storage reimagined. Head over to sarahschill.com. That's CERESCHILL.com. Or you could check them out on Instagram by the same name for more details, and use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. And these chillers can be used you can use them for the rest of your life. They're going to last forever. And they are good for, drinks, just adult drinks when you're not using it for breast milk or formula or toddler stuff anymore. So that's sarahschill.com, badass, for 15% off of your purchase. And all of our sponsors and the promo codes can be found in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, or at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. You'll find them, our sponsor page with all of our sponsors. And you'll also find over there information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne. And listeners do sign up and have gotten consultations from Dianne.
Yeah, and I try to get it covered by insurance. So if we can get you covered by insurance, then it's free. So
why not?
So why not? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you don't have to have a glaring problem to talk to Dianne. You can just
go
over what's going on, what your plans are for the future of breastfeeding related. You might want advice on other things, but I don't know if she's qualified to give you that.
I need advice on lots of things. So if you're qualified to give me advice.
Sign up for a consultation so Dianne can go over her problems with you.
I know. Yeah, that would be wonderful. But I think the last person that I did a consultation with, like just recently, in the last week or so, she was going on a trip and we needed to talk about like what was going to happen and how she should manage her milk supply and, what she should do and all that stuff. Sometimes people are returning to work and need a little guidance with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, my baby's not latching. It can be anything that you have going on that you might want to talk about.
Yeah. And I mean, you might as well just go over to, the link to sign up for the consultation is in the show notes, also at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. But you might as well just go over and see if your insurance will cover it, because if it will, then it's free. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know about the expense and maybe my problem's not big enough. But if it's free, who cares?
I know. Let your insurance take care of it.
Go over what you're going through. I mean,
yeah.
This is not information that you can find really anywhere else reliably.
I know, for sure. All right, so spitting up.
Yeah.
So as we were saying, if you have an overactive letdown, if you have too much milk, you definitely want to try to reel that in a little bit. Some of the things that you see with it, like sometimes people go, do I have too much milk? I don't know if I have too much milk. But your baby might be spitting up a lot. If they're not spitting up a lot, sometimes you might see them pooping constantly. That's the other thing you see. They're either spitting up the milk or they're pooping all the time. And that's usually a sign that there's too much milk. I remember when I worked in the doctor's office, in the pediatric office, we used to get babies in, and one of the things that would be them spitting up, like, oh my gosh, my baby's spitting up all the time. And a lot of it would be, once we kind of got down to it, we'd look at the weight gain of the baby, we'd look at like what the feedings look like and everything. And it turned out that they were just getting way too much milk. And it's, it can happen. And I know people say, well, you can't overfeed a breastfed baby, right? And it's like, well, sometimes if you have a lot of milk and your baby's a comfort nurser, you might get a baby that's overeating a little bit. Like it can happen. So, it's just something to kind of be aware of, because there's not a lot. I mean, my son, like now that I look back on it, the things that I know now, because when I had my kids, I knew nothing about breastfeeding. Yeah. Like, I don't even know how we made it, because I knew absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it is a miracle that people make it sometimes.
And we were definitely one of those miracles. But when I was breastfeeding him, like now that I look back, he was huge. I had a lot of milk. I was feeding twins. Mm-hmm. He was a huge baby and spitting up all the time. Like now that I look back, it's like, okay, I had too much milk. Like that was my problem. But nobody could help me with that, because nobody knew what they were doing. No, everybody around me didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it definitely is something that could happen. So it can cause a lot of spitting up issues with that too. Sometimes it comes out their nose when they're spitting up, and that can really scare parents a lot. We don't want our babies to be uncomfortable, right? But there's not a lot of really great answers. So when you have a baby that is spitting up and it's a reflux situation, and you say, okay, well, let me try medication, there is some side effects to, not like side effects, but there is some effects to medications too. So definitely look into some research about that. But one of the things with medication is that it doesn't keep the baby from spitting up. And I think that's one of the things that parents really want to happen, is for them. It keeps the acid from coming up.
Oh, so it's less painful, I guess.
Yeah, so it's less painful, but they're still spitting. It doesn't keep them from spitting up. So they're still going to have that spitting up even if you're on the medication. So just kind of like keep that in mind if it's a route that you want to take with your baby, that they're probably not going to stop spitting up. That's, just kind of where they're going to be with that.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's totally okay. Like unless it's a thing where they're in pain, like I said, unless they're like crying, they're fussing, you see that they're really struggling a lot with whatever. And then all of a sudden, like they spit up, like they're crying, they're fussing, and then they spit up and then they seem to feel better. Then that is a reflux problem. Like that's kind of what we're, because they're having pain with it. Yeah. They're uncomfortable. And that's something that we want to try to kind of avoid. So, some other things that you can kind of do with them. Like I said, small frequent meals can be better for babies that are refluxy or that are spitting up a lot, because we want to kind of keep that at bay a little bit. Burping them a little bit more is going to be helpful too, because that will help to keep them from keep those bubbles down, like those air bubbles, right? We want to get those air bubbles out. Like I mentioned before, if they're doing lots of gulping, they're taking in lots of milk, you want to burp them more frequently. So take them off, interrupt their feed if you need to. If they're doing lots of gulping, interrupt their feed, try to get them burped, put them back on. They might not like it. They'll be fine. It's okay. Some babies, cry a little bit when you take them off the breast if they're not finished eating. Just try to get a burp out of them and they'll be okay. If you are somebody who's not sure if you're making too much milk, then there's a couple things that you can look at. You can look at how much milk you're pumping. If you're somebody who's pumping, you can look at how much milk you're pumping, and that might tell you if you're making too much milk or not. So if you're able to pump more than 3 ounces at a time, then you might be making too much milk. So I had somebody the other day who was pumping 8 ounces.
And they're people pump 8 ounces and then they'll be like, I used to pump 8 ounces and now I'm only pumping 4 ounces.
Yeah.
And they're worried. And I just want to be like, oh, congratulations.
I know.
Great. You're headed in the right direction.
I know it. It's this is what we want. And it's so hard when you have too much milk, because people really do struggle with that. And you get it in your head that you need to have all this milk, especially parents that are going back to work. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You really, really struggle with that, with the idea that it's not going to be enough.
Yes.
And it's just,
there are people that struggle to pump who aren't able to get more than an ounce or so at a time. And that causes a lot of stress too. But, people are often like, oh, I wish I could pump that much. No, you
don't. It's too much milk, and your baby ends up suffering for that. They really do struggle when you have a lot of milk. They struggle with that. You're going to get more spitting up. You're going to get a more uncomfortable baby when you have way too much milk, because they're just being flooded with that.
Yeah.
So if you are pumping more than 3 ounces, then you're probably making more milk than your baby is ever going to need. And that is something to that is a good way to think about it. If you're pumping, say, 5 or 6 ounces at a time, you have to really think about, would my baby eat this much milk? Would my baby really drink this much milk at a breastfeeding?
Yeah.
If your answer is no, then you're probably making too much milk. And we might need to kind of calm that down a little bit, because that can be problematic. And that might be the reason why your baby is spitting up, if they are spitting up. If it's just a situation where, okay, whenever I lay my baby down, that's when I see the spitting up, then that's just situational.
That's just sphincter muscle that's down there. That's not this stuff down.
Yeah, that's all that is. It's not a big deal. Sometimes you can relate it to if you're jostling your baby around a little bit, because sometimes people like we all know, your babies poop a lot during a feeding, right? They'll pee or they'll poop during the feeding. Yeah. We see that all the time. People will ask me, because it'll happen during a feeding, and people will be like, is that normal? It's yes, that's totally normal. I personally think that babies are so relaxed when they're feeding at the breast that everything just kind of flows. So pooping at the feeding is totally normal. So then you finish the feeding and you go to change your diaper, and you're pulling their legs up and you're moving them around, and then they spit up, and you're wondering okay, what happened? And it could just be that you were just, they were moving around, they were laying down. Totally normal. We see that. Just kind of be aware of it, knowing that it could happen, being aware of it. So there's that kind of spitting up. And then you've got situations where, we were saying, you've got too much milk. Babies are spitting up all the time. Reflux. Babies are spitting up with reflux. It can happen. Mm-hmm. And they usually do grow out of it. If you're somebody that uses a pacifier with your baby, if you're of a baby that spits up a lot and they spit up a lot, using a pacifier with them after feeds can sometimes be helpful, because that sucking will help them to digest that food. Mm-hmm. The sucking releases a hormone that helps to digest. Mm-hmm. So that can help a lot if you give them a pacifier. afterwards, if you're somebody who uses it, like if you're not a pacifier person, your baby's not a pacifier baby, you don't have to start one just for this. But if it's something that your baby already uses and they do spit up, you can use that with them because that'll help. Yeah. And any other things on spitting up from you?
Yes. So I was thinking about formula advertising. That's like, oh, and a lot of doctors might say this too. They'd be like, oh, well, you can use this formula that's gentle on the stomach and will help with your baby's reflux and all this. That is not necessary. If you're wanting to breastfeed and you are not wanting to use formula, you do not have to switch. It's not going to help.
Right.
It's not the breastfeeding. It's not the breast milk that's causing the reflux. Right?
Right. It's not. No, it's just the situation. And you'll hear people say too, like, oh, you can put a little bit of cereal in the bottle. That'll help with reflux. No, it won't. I know. It's not going to help. And it's not, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Cause there's just, these are companies that are trying to get customers. So they're saying all kinds of things. They're saying things that are not even legal to say in other countries. Like they'll say whatever they want in America. And like, we don't care about the WHO code that, of formula marketing and stuff they just say whatever they want. But formula is not that is not the answer. Unless you want to use formula, then fine. But if you don't want to and your baby has reflux and you're being told that switching to formula is going to help, just reject that. That's not true. And the same goes for like the bottle nipples. Like this bottle nipple is best for reflux, and this will help your baby take in less air while they're drinking the bottle. That's nonsense. That's all marketing as well. They're trying to get you as a customer. Sure, some babies probably do better on certain nipples than others, parents will report. But there's no magic. All the bottle companies are saying the same thing, that theirs is the best because they want you as a customer. And they're going to say, well, we can, our bottles are going to help you take in less air, which is nonsense because that's not a thing. We all take in air. We burp it out. If your baby's taking in too much air, that has to do more with they're not being bottle fed properly. They're probably laying on their back, taking in gulps and gulps of milk, trying to keep up, trying to not choke on it. And they're taking in air. So it's more to do with the method that you're feeding with. If you're bottle feeding, use paced bottle feeding. We have certainly episodes on that. And I think there's a little video I have somewhere of like a little
I think so.
demo.
Yeah.
I feel like I posted it in Patreon recently. Anyway, I'll look for it. And yeah, those are the kinds of things that I just watch out for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because you don't need to stop breastfeeding. Spitting up is a very normal process for babies. And like I said, I've rarely met a baby that's never spit up. I do see it a lot, and it is normal. And a lot of times you will hear people say, oh, it's really just a laundry issue. It's, if they're happy, like they call them like happy spitters. If your baby is pretty content, they're happy, then it's not, it's not a big deal. It's just a laundry problem. It can be very distressing for parents.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see them spitting up. You do not have to feed them again or anything. It always looks like more than it is, right? Like they spit up. You go, oh my God, it was the whole feeding. It's like, no, it really wasn't their whole feeding. I promise. It just always looks like more than it really is. And they're fine. You don't have to go back and feed them again just because they spit up. It just happens, and it's okay. And they'll grow out of it. That's the important thing to remember too.
I think that's sort of the takeaway is like, it's developmental. They'll grow out of it.
They'll grow out of it. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Bye.